My name is Richard Rogers and I'm an international human rights lawyer, and I'm also a member of the Sri Lanka Monitoring and Accountability Panel that was set up by the TGTE to help monitor the transitional justice program in Sri Lanka. Now, unfortunately, after almost 2 years of monitoring, we've had to conclude that the Sri Lankan government has not been acting in good faith. It has not fulfilled its legal obligations to victims, and it has not implemented the provisions of the UN resolution that it helped sponsor. Now, those failings relate to a whole range of transitional justice mechanisms, but particularly the Office of the Missing Persons that was intended to deal with the very real problem of enforced disappearances in Sri Lanka. I mean, forced disappearances are a very real problem there. It has almost one of the highest numbers of enforced disappearances anywhere in the world. NGOs estimate that at the times of the armed conflict, almost 1,000 people per year were disappearing at the hands of the security services. And this is a particularly horrific crime, not only for the victims themselves, who don't have access to the justice system, but also to the victims' families, who simply don't know where their loved ones are or what their fate may be. And that's why enforced disappearances are illegal under international law. They may be an underlying crime against humanity. And there's also obligations on the state to criminalise enforced disappearances, to investigate forced disappearances, and to provide information to the victims and the victims' families of enforced disappearances. Now, unfortunately, the Sri Lankan government has failed to fulfil its legal obligations in relation to enforced disappearances. What the Sri Lankan government must now do is firstly criminalise enforced disappearance. It must ensure that the Office of Missing Persons is up and running, that it acts independently and impartially, and that it does not hinder the prosecution of those who are guilty of causing these enforced disappearances. Thirdly, it must order its security service to immediately release any persons who are illegally detained, and it must make clear that if they are not released, then the security services themselves will be prosecuted. And finally, it must provide compensation to the victims or to the victims' families of those persons who have suffered illegal detention and disappearance. Now, of course, I realise that this is a very difficult and painful day for the thousands of relatives of those persons who have disappeared in Sri Lanka. I can't imagine how awful that must be. But all I can say to those family members is not to give up hope and to maintain your quest for truth and justice. Thank you very much.